I have this restreaming, by the way.
Awesome, awesome. Welcome everybody to the Underclass Podcast. I unfortunately decided to lose my intro because the wrong one was actually attached to the introduction. So unfortunately, we don't get the video edit intro that we typically do for the Underclass live interviews. But yeah, either way, it doesn't really matter. What matters most is that I'm joined today by the great William Ramsey of William Ramsey Investigates. I think now is really, there's no better time than now, I would say, right? Whenever he reached out to me with this sort of subject matter of the Manchurian Candidate, I felt like it was coming off the sort of right at the timing of the Minneapolis mass shooting, right? Which Robert Westman was definitely at least the alleged perpetrator, or was the perpetrator involved, and I felt like at that moment it just seemed like it was so relevant, right, as far as the Manchurian Candidate concept alone. And then we have this Charlie Kirk event happen, the assassination, obviously, and at this point, I felt like we reached this sort of heightened state of manufactured political violence in a way, which I think is very much. It feels like it's been the desired result, right? Is this heightened state of political violence and this deliberate divisiveness, right? This what I refer to so often as the modern strategy of tension, right? And just modern domestic gladio, right? And so once again, I'm forever grateful to be able to have conversations with you, right? And just sort of objectively pursue the truth by kind of spotlighting just alternative information that is very much being under acknowledged and not quite given the spotlight it deserves. And I think with so many of these events, especially as they happen in real time, I mean, right, there's so much disinformation out there muddying the waters and attempting to misdirect the general public and have individuals fall into preordained traps ideologically, right, that I think fit really the manufactured consent as well as the heightened culture war that is being inflamed at every level. And so, I mean, really, we could start anywhere, but I would imagine maybe Charlie Kirk would probably be the best place before we get into the overall presentation of the Manchurian Candidate. But before then, obviously, introduce yourself for anyone who it hasn't already become aware of the one and only William Ramsey. Please do, brother.
Yeah, I started out as an author. I was a guest. I did shows on Aleister Crowley in 9/11. This is the day after 9/11, so that was my first book, Prophet of Evil. And then I would made micro budgeted documentaries, and I made these videos that are a lot of them are censored. They're not even on YouTube anymore. But I was really a researcher even before 2010. I realized that everything I was being told on TV was a joke and stuff, really fake. And so then I just kind of became, during COVID, I did a podcast that's grown a lot. I've had great guests like you and other people. And so I'm kind of like a hybrid writer, podcast host, and micro budgeted documentary maker. But you can see all my stuff at William Ramsey Investigates on Spreaker or Spotify. And my website's the same name. And you can see my documentaries there. And then my books are available on Amazon.
Awesome. Yeah, I felt like honestly it was very strange to see just the surrounding the actual Charlie Kirk event. That I didn't understand that this was now. First of all, Kash Patel comes out today and obviously claims that the manhunt ends 33 hours. Right, less than 36 hours, specifically 33 hours after the event, and also that this was apparently since the Charlie Kirk show began July 7th, 2019. It's been 6 years and 66 days until the actual assassination. So I just always think that there are kind of, it's hard to believe in coincidence any longer when you've been sort of overexposed to the patterns that exist and are very much seemingly they resurface so very often in the context of these very much emotional, arousing, violent false flags. But yes, there obviously false flag doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't victims involved, right? I think that's unfortunately just sort of a misinterpretation. But yeah, that alone, and then the connections to the father coming out, and even the mother as well had like a strange background. I felt that deserved at least a second look, right? And I think that and then there's like footage of an apparent drone that could have been flying over as well, which I saw was recently posted. I found very interesting and just worthy of note. But beyond that, it was just like the father, Matt Robinson and Amber Robinson. All right, his dad is apparently a 27-year veteran of the Washington County Sheriff's Department in Utah, while his mom is employed by Intermountain Support Coordination Services, a Utah state contracted company that assists disabled individuals in accessing care and support services. It's still like there's even, according to her Facebook, the mother's Facebook, I found this strange as well because it seems as if there's a connection to the uncle that could very well, as we say, glow like the sun as well, right? And that seems to come in the form of like I said, the mother Amber, her Facebook page. It looks as if there was a sort of recruitment event there that were photos were apparently taken and at this Air Force event, right, with the kid wearing these Air Force hats, and Michael Robinson is apparently the uncle, right, and he is an info system security manager with the Air Force who was stationed at Hill Base in the city, apparently from approximately 2015 to 2021, and then relocated recently to Japan. So this, to me, again, you have Modern Technology Solutions, MTSI, Information System Security Manager. He's a security officer and technology specialist. So I don't know. It just how many times can we see this? It just happened with Westman as well, right, in Minneapolis. But what were your kind of like original thoughts, just knee-jerk reaction to the event itself before even some of the more extraordinary videos began to surface?
Yeah, just shocking. Like I didn't think of him as a target. I didn't see him as a sinister or obviously other people did. I was out of the loop, but I didn't think that he would go that way. So it's a great tragedy, and my thoughts go out to his family and his friends. And he was such an important figure to a lot of people. I knew of his presence on social media. He seemed to be very savvy at that, but he had a big company. They generate like $80 million in revenue. Like it's an industry, his Turning Point. But really gruesome. And like this happened after we agreed to this interview. We agreed to this last week, and just crazy things. There was also another one that happened the same day in Colorado, somewhat close to Utah. And the kid's name, I can't remember right now, but the police came out and said he was radicalized online. Yeah. Like, whoa, like what's up with that? So this guy, he was 16-year-old, and I think the guy that they caught now is 22, Robinson.
Yeah.
But you go back through some of these other guys, and they do glow. Their families glow. Crooks, I've done a show. He had 2 relatives in the intel defense industry, and Ruth looks like he worked for the State Department, who was the second attempted killer or patsy of Trump. And I mean, we have had so many shooters, like I forget a lot of them. Like I listened to that show you did with Radix on Holmes. Like that was a great show. And that's real personality change too. Like that guy was a very smart guy, high IQ, and something happened to him. And you'll see a lot of these guys undergo this personality change through the internet, which is really scary. So they're not put into a hospital, or, to my knowledge. But there's a really weird selection process and a lot of creepy things going on. And a list of all these, you mentioned Mateen in the pre-show. I'm thinking about that one guy, the Korean guy who walked into Virginia Tech, I think it was, and shot a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And these numbers, like you mentioned these numbers, the numerology, and September 11th just passed. There's tons of occult numerology that I show in my book in that event, 11s and 77s. in the Manchurian Candidate, there's a lot of 11s and 77s. And Condon was keyed in. And it's an important book and an important movie that was suppressed. Like, it's gone for 25 years. Literally, it's not reshown, I think, until 97 or 98, under the control and aegis of Frank Sinatra, who was a very close personal friend to JFK. But all that stuff happened, like in the follow-on, right after this movie came out in late 62, is the death of JFK, just a really important event, one of the most important events in American history, like the death of like Lincoln.
Yeah.
But the death of Lincoln was different in that it happened after all of those events, after the Civil War. What JFK did is like started off a war, literally changed American policy on a dime, like literally a full 180-degree turn from peace to war, and a devastating war for the Vietnamese in Southeast Asia. And for the U.S., really the psychological trauma. And I think that that's kind of like when you mentioned this term strategy of tension and gladio. Those are important. They're right. I think they're right. I think we've been under a strategy of tension probably since the late 50s. But I like to use the word collective psychic driving, because that's a term that they used in this mind control stuff, psychic driving, Ewan Cameron.
Dr. Ewan Cameron, yeah.
And I think it's collective. And that goes back to the infamous speech that Dulles gave in 53 before MK Ultra started, which is this brain warfare speech, where he says the purpose of MK Ultra is for collective and individual application. So a lot of people that you talk to, they're like, oh, that guy got tampered with. They were thinking on a much broader cultural level, societal level. And that's why I think that they're very sophisticated, like the psychological operations guys. So they're watching the response to the Kirk assassination. It's not just the assassination, but the effect. And, maximizing stress, maximizing response. Look at all these people talking. Why are people celebrating this guy's death? Like, it's creepy. And like, they're probably, it gets weird because with the kind of data mining they can do now, they can find the people who really responded or are gloating about it, and talk, like they can put them on a list for whatever use or reason too. So we're in kind of like the post, we've done shows on Mockingbird, but we're in some kind of weird post like Philip K. Dick, Minority Report Palantir thing, where they can systematically target and understand. We probably all have a dossier or a file on all of us, a digital dossier, whether we like it or not. And these things are being put in there. So I think the psychological aspects of the tragedy, Charlie Kirk tragedy, are also important. But they're within the context of this film. I think that the film is it's just a remarkable film. It was in the late 90s, it was considered to be in one of the top 100 films in the United States, like the AFI, American Film Institute. So it's up there with like The Godfather and Gone with the Wind. It's fallen out of favor. Yeah,
it's my favorite Angela Lansbury role by far, I would have to say. And I mean, you mentioned Lincoln, this symbolic nature of Lincoln all throughout the film. I just thought of that instantly because I noticed it while watching it, but I didn't quite realize the sort of very direct symbolic nature of what they intended us to understand subliminally from those, just Lincoln everywhere, even at the costume party, I believe, right? The stepfather of Raymond, the senator, right? He's dressed as Lincoln, which I find very interesting, especially knowing how of course the end result, but I don't want to get out in front. I'm just saying it's very strange, obviously, right?
I think it's intentional. Like, this shows the sophistication and knowledge and understanding of both Condon and the makers of the movie. They understood what they were putting in there without stating it. So it's there. And it's that morphing that you see of these characters, like even like Hinckley and Chapman, who identified with Holden Caulfield. These characters are morphed together. So the evil lady that Lansbury plays, Eleanor Iselin, she's the queen. And it's a key component psychologically and symbolically for the whole film, because that's the trigger point for Raymond Shaw, who's the god. And then also the grandfather, and that symbolic, or not the grandfather, but the stepfather, who's the senator Iselin. There's like sequences where they're morphing his face into a visage of Lincoln. And it's foreshadowing all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Condon has fallen out of like knowledge, and it's too bad because he's a brilliant guy, and he was like he's just kind of he Pritzi's Honor is out there. There's a movie with Jack Nicholson, but this book is really good. The book is a little bit different than the film, and but he's a smart guy. Like he had to have access to those early kind of things that were coming out about behavioral modification in the 50s, and he integrated it into this, as well as his knowledge of he has classical illusions in there, occult numerology. It's just and the other thing is that there's a subtext of like really dark MK Ultra knowledge people, because in all these different seeded books about a lot of these assassinations, they say that one of the consultants for the film was a guy by the name of William Joseph Bryan Jr. Have you ever heard his name?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So he's friends with Sinatra. He's friends with Melvin Belli, who goes on to be Jack Ruby's attorney for some strange reason, the defense criminal attorney. And then he's also friends with Bailey. So this William Joseph Bryan is a spectral shadow figure in the back, and Sinatra knows him too. It's just really something else. And that's, I think, may have been why it also was so good, accurate, and why it was suppressed.
That makes sense. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting.
You're muted, bro. I can't hear you.
Oh, for real?
Are you muted, or is it me?
I don't know.
Me.
I think.
Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, I can hear you. Let me know. Let me know the chat if you can still hear.
I've had problems with StreamYard recently.
Okay. Well, while William is getting his audio back together, well, you might. Let me see. You guys, let me know in the chat just to make sure. What's up, William? Yeah, I think it is you, honestly. But while he can hear us both. Okay.
What happens is, like, if somebody goes through and like brings something up, like the connection drops. It's really crazy. So
yeah,
I know you're talking. It should. Okay, so Carl can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
I guess but I need to hear you. That's the whole thing.
Right. Maybe leave and come back. Yeah, I think he just did. All right. So while William is gone, let me add him back. Can you hear me now? No.
I'll have to shut down my computer.
Okay. All right. So while we're waiting for William to get back, hopefully we can get this technological difficulty resolved. But I did find it very interesting as far as like in the immediate wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, you have these public representatives like making the rounds, essentially kind of escalating what seems to be what they hope to achieve, right? Which is just this sort of, I believe Jesse Waters on Fox News even called it essentially a war, right? And it very much is the culture war that they're attempting to, I think, just ratchet up in every way. But you even have Anna Paulina Luna, right? She's going on with Benny Johnson, who we all know is one of the usual suspects, obviously, as far as very much being a strategic asset of modern Mockingbird, put into position in the alternative media landscape to misdirect the general public in many ways, especially the conservative aisle. And so once again, I feel like he glows like the sun, like many of them, like the Sean Ryans of the world. And so Anna Paulina Luna, she happens to go on his show and announce legislation directly in the aftermath of this assassination, which is apparently in an attempt to make politically motivated attacks. Let me remain focused to see if William makes it back in the private as well. But yeah, but still attempting to essentially use this as a pretext, right, to make politically motivated attacks a civil rights violation, and claiming that in the process, she says she's in the process of writing legislation to update the civil rights codes to ensure that if you are committing an act hate crime as a result of someone's political ideologies and affiliations, that it should be the same charges as a civil rights violation. This is going to be punitive action, and I'd hope that the person that did this to Charlie gets the electric chair. says Anna Paulina Luna. And yeah, I feel like there's no way that this was accidental, right? This seems very much by design. Can you hear me, William? Awesome.
Loud and clear.
Awesome. All right, cool. Go right ahead. I can't remember where we left off, but I was just making the kind of making the additional point that they utilized this Charlie Kirk event to once again, of course, attempt to present legislative action to essentially crack down on what they claimed would be a hate crime that was politically motivated, right? And calling it a civil rights violation, essentially. And I find that very interesting because once again, it sets a pretext in my mind of how they could massage that for their own benefit. And it's always in the dystopian direction in my mind. But
Me
anyway.
too. Maybe they should really put funding towards like kids' activities and music and athletics and art and drama and get these kids away from their computer. Jeez. Like I think almost these recent things, it's always somebody online getting the worst ideas imaginable. That's what they should do is shut down some of these bums. But yeah, I think I was just talking about Condon and William Joseph Bryan, who pops up again in Surian. But the fact that he's involved with this movie and kind of surrounding the JFK assassination, like it's a kind of a lost history that really is true, but it's more accurate, and it's kind of left out of the JFK story, the JFK assassination story. They always mention Dulles and some of these other characters at the CIA, but they don't ever bring in. Like I can't really find one. There's a couple ones. We Were Bamboozled, which is a really interesting book, which we can get to about mind control, and Oswald. But they never bring in the fact that Oswald was in and out of weird things like the main character in Manchurian Candidate. He went, like Oswald literally went and defected and came back to the United States and didn't go to jail during the height of the Cold War. I mean, you can't write this stuff. Like how? Like this isn't normal. Like what's going on? Like why didn't he get arrested of setting one foot on the ground in the U.S., especially during that time? But Dulles is the head of the MK Ultra and gets fired by JFK after the Bay of Pigs, and then magically shows up at the head of the Warren Court in the Warren Commission. Like, I mean, come on,
you heard that Claudia Mullen claim of being essentially brought in the early 50s by Alan Dulles in the network, essentially to one, she claimed down in Deer Creek Woods in this remote location, she, along with 75 other children, were trained in how to sexually pleasure a target individual, and then also how to pull information from them while in the process. And she claimed she had basically she came from a broken home. Her mother was essentially just had 8 children, was abused herself in this sort of strange domestic situation. And then her own father and grandfather were sexually abusing the children, including Claudia, and making basically child pornography already. And so basically the grandfather was blackmailed after catching a charge for the child pornography into it. It reminded me of the Kathy O'Brien story, right? Of the father basically catching a charge and being recruited into the network. Okay, here's your choice. Essentially, you join us and we train you up in these sophisticated methods of how you can induce an individual victim into dissociative identity disorder through trauma-based mind control techniques and abuse, and or you sort of, we throw the book at you and you endure the ultimate consequences in the penal system. And the same thing seemed to happen with the grandfather of Claudia Mullen. And then she goes on to claim that she was sent in a strategic human honeypot child prostitution operation to sexually compromise Frank Church.
I've heard that. So she was the one who compromised Frank Church. Wow.
Yeah.
See, I had heard that. So all those commissions were totally corrupt, by the way. The Rockefeller Commission and all these other ones were just totally compromised, and people died around them. Like there was the original House Committee on Assassinations. Like Johnny Rosselli shows up dead in a drum, 55-gallon drum. And then another mobster shows up dead. Like so many people died or got intimidated or everything. But I'm now believing I mean, it's easy. Those stories are easier for me to believe after I've done all this research and looking into MK Ultra and all these other things. MK Ultra is just like it's the research part of the mind control thing. That's what people don't get. It's not the operational. They should be looking for the operational applications of this stuff, because the research, the 149 sub projects were all a massive research project. But so I'm finding that more believable, and all that stuff. The ability for people to be more suggestible, like they find if they're tortured as children or they go through really rough childhoods or traumatic childhoods, they're more suggestible, they're more susceptible. That's why you have these guys who show up, like Sirhan went through the Nakba, things where the Palestinians were kicked out of their land, and like wells were being poisoned with human heads and stuff like that, like really horrible stuff. I think he and his family like lived in a church for 18 months. So he always, so I mean, that's just one example. And Oswald had no father and had a rough childhood. And so, I mean, do you know that Oswald, he was psychologically assessed at the age of 13 at the youth house? So he was already kind of like this girl, like Mullen, like he is vulnerable. Right. He was psychologically assessed, and this is, you can just look it up. Look up 13-year-old Oswald psychological assessment by Norbert Hubertus or something like that, who went on, like William Joseph Bryan, to get busted for inappropriate. Well, it's just a nice way of saying inappropriate contact with his patients. And he's connected to this other woman who's an MK Ultra doctor. Her name is Loretta, like something like that, who's like in this whole suite. Like, these are names that are incredible, but like they're left out of the JFK story. Lee Harvey Oswald was special. There was something about him that was he was taken care of and handled like Raymond Shaw in the movie. So like another talk I've talked about Manchurian Candidate is fiction to fact, because it's really incredible. And we talked about this in the pre-show, but Condon, who wrote the book in 1959, went on to write the intro to, like, there's two seminal books on mind control. One is The Search for the Manchurian Candidate by Marx, and the other one is Operation Mind Control by Bauer. And who's writing the intro? Richard Condon. That's so he's crazy. An expert. Yeah, it is so crazy. It just gets crazier and crazier. So these are, I mean, there's no surprise that this was taken out of public dispute. They could not have people analyzing this. They just couldn't, until after a JFK, because it was too freaking accurate and too much resembled. I mean, the rifles, the putting into place, the changing of the guard. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things that is unnerving about some of these assassinations is it's not just the assassination, but what happens after. Because MLK, for example, was murdered in 1968, and they had people waiting in the wings to just fill his space who were less dangerous, really. I think MLK became dangerous. He was against the Vietnam War, and they got that other guy who I can't remember, Rainbow Coalition guy, and you just feed him money and some sex-real girls, and he just does what compliant. He was doing that. He was not dangerous. Well, I forgot his name. People in the chat will probably remember it, but so all these people, they are replaced, and that's kind of what's weird about what I've noticed about this Charlie Kirk death is both Ben Shapiro and the Dildo Rabbi have made public statements. I mean, this is so grotesque. Like, Charlie Kirk hasn't been buried yet. They have both said that we're going to go in and fill the space Charlie left. So, like, these are the people who are going to be pro-Israel all the way. Charlie Kirk was questioning Israel. There's no question about it, but I'm not trying to insinuate that they did it, but it is weird that they're coming in right in there. They slid it right in there within 24 hours. And that's what happens with this. They knew JFK is dead, Johnson. They knew RFK, who's the other elected. I think Nixon went on to win, right? So because RFK is gone, they can slide Nixon in 1968, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Nixon who took that. Let me make sure. Either way, I looked up the age of 13 Oswald note that you mentioned, and yes, he undergoes a psychological eval after being sent to a juvenile detention center for truancy, allegedly. And the assessment indicated he was emotionally disturbed exhibiting a personality pattern disturbance with schizoid features and passive-aggressive tendencies, largely attributed to a lack of normal family life and affection from his mother. That's so crazy. That fits the pattern in the
It's
playbook as
Raymond
far as
Shaw.
yeah,
It's Raymond
it is
Shaw,
Raymond
right?
Shaw. You're totally
I mean,
right.
you literally. I mean, this stuff is it's kept out of the JFK assassination. It's so important. All this, he is under, and one of the weird things, and people have made this connection. I did a show with Walter Herbst, Herbsd, really
Mhm.
great books. It was before the JFK assassination, all the stuff that led up. Who else is in this area where Oswald is in Manhattan, in New York? Is George Hunter White, who was an ultimate like baller. He was part of the Department of Narcotics and then went to the FBI, but he was involved in Operation Midnight Climax with
Oh,
Gittinger and doing it in New York. And there are elements where he was at the same freaking place that this youth house that Oswald was at. Like their
oh
connections
my
to that
God.
place, not to Oswald directly,
Right.
but Oswald. Okay, so like if you watch this movie, Raymond Shaw, who's played by Lawrence Harvey,
Mhm.
he's handled right. So he's deliberately brought to Manchuria to be programmed. Like he's specifically brought there. Then he's
Yes.
brought back, and then he's to New York, and then his handler, Doctor Yo Len, or I forgot the China, Asian guy. He
Mhm.
goes to New York in a safe house at a medical facility, and they explain it just like it's an MK Ultra medical
They
experiment.
did, man. Like, out for Alcoholics Anonymous, they said,
Right.
right? Like
We have a special wing, and you watch these other things, whether it's you in Cameron, Georgetown, Vermont. I mean, just list goes on. They're normal hospitals with a special wing for
My God.
whatever. So he's literally Condon is literally ripping off like literal real world events, like factual events.
I recently discovered the fact that Oswald applied for a job at an MK Ultra institution.
The
That
Clinton, the Clinton one
it was the yeah, I believe
in
it was.
Louisiana.
It was I believe it was called East Louisiana State University or Hospital. I mean, East Louisiana State Hospital. It was in Jackson, Louisiana, and it happened to be the facility where Lee Harvey Oswald tried to apply for a job in 1963 during his time with New Orleans Intelligence Network. Right, Clay Shaw, Guy Bannister, David Ferry, obviously, but that was it was all proven by essentially in 1975 that the clinical director of East Louisiana Hospital, Dr. Alfred Butterworth, he conducted a many different LSD experiments in the
Wow.
60s. And yeah, and he was claiming that Marx revealed that Sandoz Chemical would provide the LSD directly to this facility, East Louisiana State Hospital, free of charge to MK Ultra researchers. And Butterworth admitted that he received his LSD directly from Sandoz for free. And in fact, while at Fort Detrick, it was Butterworth who worked with the infamous Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. Right.
No, you can't write this stuff, dude.
No,
Look at
man.
this book, Tripped. You got to get this book. It's really good because it talks
Trip.
about CIA, LSD, and Nazi Germany. So it all came out of there, Hoffman and all that stuff.
My
That
God.
information is so incredible, dude, because that's one of the key for people who don't know the kind of intricacies of Garrison's investigation. He was trying to make, you just talked about that nexus, but you got to remember this is in the late 60s. He's trying to prove that Oswald's connected to Ferry's connected to Shaw's connected to what's the other guy's name who's the FBI guy down there, in the scene of JFK where they're fighting right at the beginning. Anyway, somebody in the chat.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I think you just mentioned his name.
yeah.
But anyway,
Guy Bannister?
Bannister, thank you.
Yeah.
Bannister with an interesting background, FBI, UFO background, member of the
Mhm.
International Jesters. Clay Shaw's rumored to be a Knight of Malta, like Dulles,
Yep.
and like Galen, and like
Alexander
Himmler.
Haig, too.
Haig, all these guys. They're all around. They always leave out the Knight of Malta thing. What people don't know
Mhm.
about Shaw, he was a war hero. He was the aide de camp to General Thrasher. And when the U.S. invaded Operation Overlord in June 44, he was right there in southern England helping everything out. And he had definitely honors. He's portrayed differently in the JFK film, but he really was a military hero. Like a lot of these guys, they were all bonded in World War II. But anyway, Garrison was trying to fuse all these guys together. And one of the key elements of fusing together is witnesses who saw Ferry, Shaw, and Oswald together at that hospital. So they're like, I could have swore these guys were together at this hospital. And that's really important. And if you look at some of these other assassins, whether it's Chapman or Sirhan, and some of the other, in and out of the hospital all the time. Sirhan is in and out of the hospital almost on a monthly basis. It's very weird. And Chapman worked
going to the dentist.
Right. Whatever. Yeah, be careful. And also Oswald's in and out. He's at Atsugi. You talked about these LSD experiments. We know they were doing LSD experiments there because some of these FOI documents showed that none other than Dulles, after Olson got defenestrated, got kicked out of a window and died in 1953, Dulles wrote documents to say halt all LSD testing, and one of those documents went directly to Atsugi. So,
no.
Yeah. So they were doing it in 1953 before Oswald showed up there. And Oswald was weird. Like he was like, Atsugi, for people who don't know, it's basically suburban Tokyo. He was like dating high-end hookers and had extra money and acting strange. And then he had a suicide attempt. He ended up in the hospital. Right. Then he leaves and he goes to the Soviet Union. And all these recent documents showed that he's in contact with CIA attachés in the Soviet Union. Yeah. And he's in the hospital there as well. He's in Minsk.
Yeah, I believe they claimed he was on an intelligence dangle for the U-2 spy plane that was apparently following him. Or maybe it was he was going everywhere the spy plane was going, or the spy plane was following basically the same path that Oswald was following while he was in what is claimed to have been the fake defector program after his time in Atsugi. And essentially, what did they even say? That they tried to reference some like that he fired off his weapon during a patrol or something, and that was one of the sort of sheep dipping mechanisms, I think, as far as just the descriptive details that would provide individuals with this sort of a path that was plausible enough for them to buy this as a true, betrayal and defection from the armed forces in some honest, right, sort of communist sort of way, right? Which obviously, what's the name of the stepfather in the Manchurian Candidate, the senator who's fully controlled by the mother?
Yeah,
Iceland. He's so clearly seems to be this reflection of McCarthy, right? Doesn't it seem that way?
No, that's absolutely right. Condon intended that. Mm-hmm. Condon intended that to be McCarthy and intended the mother to be none other than Roy Cohn.
God, no way.
He writes it right at the intro of Manchurian Candidate. That's Donald Trump's kind of like handler.
Where's my Roy Cohn?
Yeah. He was also involved in so much scurrilous crap like
he
blackmail,
sexual Richard Kirk from the Kinkora Boys Home. There's no doubt in my mind, and trafficked him as well, and sexually abused him, I just think it's so clearly obvious that he was a part of the Blue Suite parties, blackmailing, sexually compromising J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, I reference that so often because it proves how long-standing this truly has been, and how, I mean, come on, this in my mind. You would if that is your mentor, you would have to be drenched in the techniques at a certain level, right? As far as human compromise, in my mind, there's no doubt in my mind, right?
Trump is probably thinking we're all compromised together or something, but I mean that's probably what it was. Like we're all doing naughty things together, so we're all going to be quiet. No. That information's going somewhere else, bro. Like I think they've got compromise on Trump. That's probably freaking horrible, dude.
It has to be at this point. It feels that way, and I know that just as far as when David Berkowitz said that the children or the divine 22 disciples from hell, or I forget the name. I think they were just called the children. That local chapter of the process. When he claimed that they were providing Roy Cohn young children for his human compromise sexual blackmail parties at his mansion. Essentially, that was very geographically in proximity to that of Trump's for quite some time, let alone the Adnan Khashoggi connection to Trump procuring the yacht that's rigged with audiovisual blackmail from it's like, what are we doing here? Why are you trying to procure all of these various sexual blackmail assets, that even that very hotel that Roy Cohn was running his human compromise operations from, Trump would later purchase, which is fascinating to me, right? And you consider that idea, though, what you just mentioned, that just triggered the thought that, of course, like Trump kind of feeling as if, he's insulated to a certain extent due to the fact that they're all effectively compromised in a similar way. But yet, here's the interesting part, because clearly for public perception purposes only, you would want to leverage this in some sort of political football, right, ideological way, where I just saw a report just coming off the back just before the Charlie Kirk assassination and coming off of the back of the recent Epstein disclosures, like the birthday book and some of the more interesting aspects of what was exposed through that, although it was heavily redacted clearly. You had a report where the FBI was claiming that is now opening an internal investigation into whether its own agents obstructed politically sensitive cases, including the cover-up of the Anthony Weiner laptop. And I thought, there you go. All you hit, if they attempted to at least kind of control that release in terms of control the transparency or the narrative involved, right, and for a political partisan way, right, and strategically, then yeah, of course you would want to utilize that scandal in a way to remind everyone, oh, don't you remember Hillary Clinton and Abedin are just as much pedophilic, as sinister perpetrators as I am, which is kind of like a deflectionary measure, but it seems like it's possible. That's the only reason that I'm considering it. But anyway, go ahead, William. Sorry about that.
Nothing. I mean, it's just crazy that Cohn is brought up in Manchurian Candidate, and it makes sense. Like, she's perceived as one of the great villains of movie history. Right. And it's also interesting, she got her start, Angela Lansbury, in the film Gaslighting, which is how we get the term gaslighting, because gaslighting is everywhere today.
Is that true? I did not know that.
Yeah, she was in the film Gaslight. She was the maid in Gaslight.
Wow.
So, and she's a legend. I mean, really interesting, but yeah. And in the book, there's incest too. So she's being raped by her dad from when she was 10 to 16. And the insinuation is that Raymond Shaw is the offspring of her and her dad. And then, he goes and kills his mom, right? So It's really dark. And then in the book, when at the very scene where she's programming him for the big kill, and she comes in the kiss in the book, they do the dirty deed. And so,
oh my God. Yeah.
So then Raymond Shaw's having these memories of having sex with his mom. So he's actually kind of a mind-controlled sex slave for his mom. It's really
absolutely
dark. Super duper dark. Yeah,
that's the sort of pedophile dynastic family component, as far as like how much of this is generational abuse that's kind of recycled. Like I found that same structured outcome in terms of Regina Louf. Her grandmother was running a brothel in Nazi Germany for officers and for enlisted men. And then once it's sort of shut down post-war, she just escapes and essentially resets up a new network with the brothels intact in Belgium, basically. And it seems as if this is a par for the course. And another reason why I definitely took seriously the notion that what Kerry Thornley claimed about Oswald, where he says that they were brothers in this sort of Nazi breeding experiment. I always found that very strange and interesting, but considering the monarch mind control aspect of having access to vulnerable children who have no real protectors or guardians, and clearly, seemingly, many of them are sociopathic in nature. That was Regina Louf's grandmother was sexually abusing her and forcing her to sexually pleasure her. So it seems like it's par for the course in terms of the enterprise of the pedophile underworld. We've
talked about that, man. It's networked. Like, it's crazy. And Condon kind of keyed into that. I think he really keyed into that. He was a genius. I mean, this book is really incredible. The stuff he put in. He knew all the secretive Illuminati, occult numerology, and I think he correlated with this kind of hypnotic induction thing, and he's like implying that it's an act of magic, so like I think that that's really what his implication is. So and also his classical illusions. So there's one sequence where Marco, who's played by Sinatra, and Shaw, who's played by Lawrence Harvey, they're talking, and he mentions this thing, the Greek myth about Orestes and his mother Clytemnestra. Orestes avenges the murder of his dad Agamemnon by killing his mother. And so he like literally puts in a classical illusion foreshadowing what's going to happen at the end.
My God.
Yeah, that's really crazy. And at the end, by the way, another interesting thing is that they decide to dress up Raymond Shaw as a priest. And then Ferry is a defrocked priest, and so is William Joseph Bryan, and they're both members of this weird offshoot of priest class called like the Orthodox Catholic Church, which is not like a standard church. It's a bunch of guys like LARPing as priests.
Exactly.
But it's something that it's something in the Catholic mindset, I think, that if you like obtaining the priesthood is an object. And so if you're not able to do that, you kind of like, this is the end way around, like a fake lawyer or a fake, intelligence guy or something. But and then get this, then there are people who like witnessed Oswald, and they were all taken care of. They were all greased. There's like a hit list of so many people who died after November 22nd, 1963. One of the guys he tells his wife, there's some guy in a priest outfit trying to follow me. He's out there. I don't know what's going on.
No. Oh my God.
That's a real story. And one of the interesting things about Ferry, who Garrison said, I think Garrison didn't mince words. He said he was one of the most important people who ever lived.
Wow.
That was Garrison's opinion of Ferry. And Ferry he was investigated by the FBI and let go after the assassination. Yeah. And they said there's like the records of the FBI investigation on Ferry exist. And they said he was just laughing and glib, like he knew he wasn't going to get busted. And think about what he did for 4 years before Garrison keyed into him, right? Like, what the heck is Ferry doing after the assassination? We know Ferry's like whereabouts. He's connected to Marcello, right? So he was in court with Marcello, I think, on the day of the assassination. Then he disappears, and he's seen at like some skating rink in Houston or something. And there's a storm, and he's making phone calls, but he never really says what he's doing there. But I think the people who've investigated said that the teams who killed Kennedy were then out of Dallas. They were flown out of Dallas, and they were flown back over to Mexico with the asset of Ferry. Yeah.
Tosh Plumley basically says that, and he essentially confirmed with, of course, that was with St. John Hunt, Howard Hunt's son, which I found very interesting. That Tosh was essentially, he says that he swore loyalty to Howard Hunt, and so he would not go public with the information unless his son essentially gave him the okay. And so St. John Hunt urged him to go public with some of the details of this. And so he claimed that he was one of the getaway pilots out of Dallas that day who also flew in the hit squads, right? And he was one of the getaway pilots, claiming the other was Barry Seal. Yeah, there you go. Which makes a lot of sense, considering his connection to the Civil Air Patrol unit with David Ferry as well. And apparently, even when he was 16 years old, he was potentially a part of Operation Agent Orange, right? The Vietnam, isn't that the one, I believe? Or what was the... No, that's not the name of the operation. Either way, he was running covert operations during the Vietnam War, obviously, and I believe that's when they were poisoning the countryside at that time. I believe was what was happening, and essentially, what I find crazy though is that it backs up as far as what you just mentioned with David Ferry. Hopsicker wrote in Barry Seal and the Boys, right? Barry and the Boys. He essentially claims that, of course, they found all these mind control manuals, obviously these books on the occult and hypnotism, and in his place whenever he suicided, and
right at the time he's under investigation, he just conveniently dies. They
Right.
said he had a bruise in the back of his head or something like that. I forgot.
Yeah.
Like
He definitely got I would say targeted execution. Yeah, exactly. And he belonged to the old Catholic Church alongside William Joseph Bryan, as you mentioned, and this is who they claim allegedly trained David Ferry in hypnotism, which I found very interesting. And yeah, I thought also the idea that he was experimenting on the boys in the cap, it makes all the sense in the world. The claim is that he was doing experiments on boys at Tulane University, which it goes back to we were just talking about, obviously, the level of kind of when as far as like that connection to the East Louisiana State Hospital that Oswald was trying to get employed at. It turns out it was Dr. Robert Heath, who was the former chairman of Tulane University Medical School's Department of Neurology and Psychiatry. And he's the one who used LSD and electrode implantation in much of his research. And it was apparently Dr. Robert Heath, who was most of his subjects were from that very hospital that Oswald attempted to apply at in 63, East Louisiana State, where a 133-bed ward was assigned specifically for Dr. Robert Heath's research. So that's crazy to me.
it gets really dark. Mm-hmm. Implantation. This is Jose Delgado, who they said, somebody asked him, have they ever done any experiments on people? And he said, experiments were made. He didn't say any specifics. Delgado's at Yale. Like, this is not a chump. You can see him, he's on YouTube. Like the saturation of the kind of experimentation boggles the mind. Like, people would just recoil and marvel at the insanity and the destruction, because you have to go back and look at how many people lost their mind, like literally lost their minds in the 50s and 60s, and they may have been under treatment. They didn't know. Ewan Cameron, his subjects thought they were going in for, this is part of the dark the dark mind control stuff, is that they were going in for help. They weren't severely mentally ill. They came out wrecked, but they thought for going for treatment. Like, there's some people going to treatment, this kind of treatment under Cameron, for 17 years. They did, but they didn't know what was happening because they were either drugged or put under or put to sleep.
Right.
But it was happening all over. That's the whole thing. And Heath and Oswald, the book is We Were Controlled. So check it out. It gets pretty wild. And there, if you read, it's by a guy, Larry Lawrence. Nobody knows who he is. It's a total pen name. And he had to, because he thinks that Oswald was a deep, deep subject. And there are, if you look at Jim Keith's Mind Control, World Control, I think is the title, there's statements in there that will literally blow your mind. Like the brother saying that his brother, Oswald had a brother, Robert, and Robert's like, man, he's really different. Like, something's wrong with him. What's wrong with his hair? His mom's like, did they give him ECT and they actually change like the texture of Lee Harvey Oswald's hair, and he didn't know it? And that's what these guys were doing. Ewan Cameron was giving people electroshock therapy at like 1,000 times the like standard limit. That's so bad that their literal like autonomic systems would stop, and like people would freak out because the people got hit with so much freaking juice that they would stop breathing, and they had to slap them back into consciousness. Like, it's totally immoral and off the charts. But it goes back to this guy Oswald. He is very special,
right?
And he has these handles. He's got Ferry, he's got Shaw, he's got Bannister, he's got DeMorenshield, he's got Payne. Those are like, and Thornley's there at the beginning. Thornley's he's not a reliable source. It's because he's a Discordian, and he's been tampered with too. He thought he was implanted later on in his life. Yeah. And he also thought he was being followed. Like, people would show up and say, "Hey, Kerry, how are you?" And he'd be like, "This is just another person monitoring me." Like, he was being monitored. God. Yeah, like they show up in like North Carolina.
You're a lifetime asset.
Yeah, and he was like freaked out. Like, he's friends with, I think, the Discordian movement involved a lot of occultists. It involved.
They just show up to Thornley. and say, "Hey, I think you ought to play a game of solitaire." Is that what
Whatever.
yeah.
The thing that isn't focused in on Thornley, who wrote a book called The Idle Warriors before the assassination, is he wrote 2 other books after the assassination. One is called Oswald, and he thinks that he was friends with somebody who he identifies as E. Howard Hunt. He thinks it's E. Howard Hunt, who is the kind of head of domestic operations. Hunt was a piece of work. Like, you could do a show on that guy because he shows up everywhere, and even in the Watergate stuff, which people think was just like an intel ruse to undercut, which I think is true. Al Haig was involved in that, and Knights of Malta, to undercut Nixon. But shows up in the Wallace assassination. He shows up with the MLK stuff. I mean, and then if he's with Thornley in, of all places, New Orleans at the same time. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they that's so crazy to me that Thornley is obviously so directly affiliated with just the parents in the corporation of the process chapter in Louisiana there with Thomas Jude Baumler. I didn't realize how much he had apparently gone and visited the local chapter. And so it just, again, it kind of like, to me, it at least the implication there was that it was very much a part of this strategic designed occultism that it seems to be very much layered into many of these, just as far as like the sacrificial nature. It seems like it's an occult ritual at some level, and that's why I mentioned the sort of strange symbolic attachments to the Charlie Kirk assassination at the beginning, because I always feel like there's a level of it that you can always seem to, at the very least, you spot the pattern, and it typically happens the more the event is emotionally arousing, right? As far as like it definitely provokes that sort of over emotional reaction. And I think that that's another it's a very useful tool as far as implementing that level of demoralization into the minds of the public, and also ratcheting up the tension at every level. And even if it is manufactured political violence, for this modern strategy of tension, it seems to be working at a certain level. And that is that's to me, I think it should give everyone pause when you're having these knee-jerk over emotional reactions to these events, because I think that is really they're sort of relying on that, consequential outcome, and it never leads to a more sort of individual, as far as just a more sovereign position in any way. It's always more of a sort of authoritarian dystopian path that we seem to be following, and never can we seem to disrupt that path. And that's where I feel like it's time for us to consistently attempt to distinguish between what is real and what is the kayfabe political theater, and what is the smoke and mirrors intended to derail our interpretation of the event and things of that nature. But you mentioned Dr. Ewan Cameron and the psychic driving. I mean, that's what they claim Sirhan was apparently, that he had essentially been one of the prime candidates of that very technique of Ewan Cameron's psychic driving technique. And I thought that was interesting, because what they claimed, what he accomplished, some of what the claims were, is that legitimately through the patients that he was utilizing at the Allen Memorial Institute, McGill University, right? They're coming in for, like you mentioned earlier, these very just average
Depression, postpartum depression,
exactly. Anxiety disorders, exactly.
alcoholism.
And then they're subjected to this driving technique and placed into drug-induced comas for weeks at a time. Some of them, there were reports showing his victims forgetting their parents and thinking their interrogators were their parents. And I always found that so fascinating that, you could, one of the explanations for one of the patient victims that had endured much of the Montreal experiments and the psychic driving technique, she had been, her entire adult personality was fractured and sort of destroyed, and she had to recreate over years, consecutive years. She had to sort of recreate and restructure an adult personality because she had been psychically driven down to that very young age psychologically, which again, like the Regina Loufs of the world, it sounds like they can attach an age, and even like a sort of some of the altars not only were stuck in a certain age bracket, but they also seem to, some of them would even have accents or something to that effect applied to their altar within the concept of the dissociative identity disorder and the fracturing of the neural pathways. It's fascinating to me that you could recreate, you know, identities in the fractured subconscious mind, right? It's amazing.
The amnesia is a very important component. So these people were tested on, but they don't remember it. Something's different about them. So they've gone through a behavioral modification. And some people's, the treatment was so bad that they had to be trained like infants again to use the toilet and stuff. Like, it was horrible. So, I mean, this guy went on for a long time, and he was fortunate to die of a heart attack before he could ever get busted. But the kind of stuff that he did, I mean, there was a major outlays of funds, and it really shocks the conscience what they were doing all over the country, really. I mean, so the wreckage is all over the place. And the MK element about the JFK assassination is focused on by some people, but it's not emphasized enough. Like, literally, the thing about Ruth Paine a lot of people don't know is that she was from a rich family, Eastern family. She goes to Irving for some reason. But before World War II, one of her best friends was a woman by the name of Mary Bancroft. And they traveled Europe together. They were having fun. They were, you know, carousing and doing all kinds of stuff. They separated. Paine comes back to the States. Mary Bancroft goes and gets a job. She's multilingual. She gets a job with none other than Alan Dulles.
Oh my
She literally
God.
becomes Alan Dulles' secretary and liaison to the conspirators who were trying to kill Hitler. And she wrote an autobiography. It's called The Autobiography of a Spy, and she tells her whole story about her and Ruth Paine and Dulles. And then all of a sudden, Paine shows up, this person who's literally 2 degrees of separation from Alan Dulles. Paine shows up to become the handler of Oswald and get him the job at the school depository, and lived with Marina and the mom, and they found a rifle there. So, like, even this most recent shooting with Charlie Kirk is like, where's the rifle? Like, you found a rifle. People have been found with a rifle. There's a guy with a pellet gun. Like, all of a sudden, Ruth Paine is an essential character in the whole Oswald's crazy story. Oswald did it, right? So she is a central component, and she just died, and she took a lot of stuff to her grave. But that her house is still there as a museum. And it shows the totality and the potency of how they can create almost like a staged event, like the 6-4 depository and her house are like Wizard of Oz faked environments. Like, they're all full of shit crap. They're just, her story's baloney. And that's how far they went to establish the Oswald Dunnett story. So it's really crazy.
And didn't even claim on like during his last days where they're forcefully interrogating him, and he says that the pictures of the rifle is superimposed, and I mean, at every level and then his final call I always found interesting as well. There's something going on in terms of the Carcano rifle and attempting. It's so clearly obvious that was a plant, and it seems like in my mind, I saw, I think it was Owen Schroyer on Twitter. I just saw him right after the event took place, and essentially he goes, the gun in the woods reminds me of the passports in the rubble. And I just thought, you're not wrong, because I mean, clearly this individual, you see him running away, right? And you do not see a rifle on the individual. Now, I've heard claims and I've seen the footage of him allegedly, and again, I'm not entirely. I'm very skeptical of this alleged Tyler Robinson being the perpetrator. Obviously, it seems very much like a plausible patsy situation. But especially considering like his father, right? Just in terms of the arrest itself. I mentioned the crazy connections, but then CNN reported that the suspect confessed to his father, and then his father told the authorities that he had secured his son until they could arrive to pick him up. I mean, that imagine, like, I get, I don't know, it's so difficult for me to even imagine what you would do in that situation if you actually, if this were, at face value, your son legitimately was responsible for this, although he had a 34 ACT score and seemed to, like some of the videos of the kid. Yeah, he could have been radicalized that quickly at university. It's possible. Obviously, there's this sort of mind virus that's going around, but at the same time, I mean, it's a little bit hard to kind of accept as far as just the overall details that are coming out. And then I saw Ben Shapiro. I don't know if this is legitimate, but I saw that he just took over Turning Point USA. Right? Yes. No,
Today?
that's what I just saw this report, which
Wow.
that blows
Wow.
my mind.
Wow. So he's just waiting in the wings to take
Right.
it out. Wow.
Isn't that nuts?
That is absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I
Where
just
is
think,
that? Oh my God, dude.
honestly, I think that,
I mean, it's moved in right away.
right.
So, like, I mean, I think that Charlie Kirk was having some misgivings about like Israel and
It seems that way.
what's gone. Wow.
Right. And I saw there was sort of like the weapon itself, allegedly the scope that is attached. Um, it's sort of mounted in a way where this is seemingly it the implication is that it was faked evidence, that this wasn't necessarily the attachment you would have utilized in this situation, and any sort of like accomplished expert shooter, and so that they essentially were claiming that it was the rifle itself had been planted, obviously, and just imagining the idea of jumping off the roof, right, and then running into the woods and and dropping the rifle, but also neatly wrapping it in a towel and having this what was the ideological markings that were on. I thought it was so strange, right? The inscriptions that were on the
Bullets.
casings.
You're right.
Yeah, hey fascist, catch. I think another one was uh notices, bulges, OWO, what's this? And then I saw something else, which was basically, um, I'm pretty sure it was like an Italian phrase that was kind of trying to evoke that let me find it because Bella Ciao, that was it. Bella Ciao. It was apparently a reference to an Italian anti-fascist anthem, which at first when I saw this come out, I really considered that, okay, slow your roll. Like, don't accept this immediately as being the case, because there's clearly an effort being, as far as an ongoing effort to kind of plant this ideologically driven motive, and attach that very firmly on, and obviously seeing this rise in trans violence, right? But again, also I had seen originally there was the New York Times had kind of covered or the Washington Times, actually, the Washington Times and the Washington Street Journal as well. They both sort of covered this and basically claimed that it appeared to be engraved with statements expressing transgender anti-fascist ideology. But then you had an alleged ATF representative who is an official and directly acknowledged that this investigation, he cautioned that the report had not been verified by ATF analysts and did not match other summaries of the evidence and might turn out to have been misread or misinterpreted. But then we have today's announcement where they gave the detailed inscriptions that were on. You see, it's like this, like very attempted kind of, you're having the waters strategically muddied in my mind in order for us to not have this clear view of what is taking place, but also have the individuals who are at that lower frequency just kind of what appeals to them more than anything is the clickbait headlines, and And so effectively, all you would have to do is claim that no, this, at least it. I was thinking you could at the beginning before it came out and was reconfirmed. Allegedly, it's the markings are on the misfired casings or unfired casings. I still thought, well, this could be a very strategic way to obviously attach that transgender radical progressive ideology to this violent event. But then when the new information comes out, it could just as easily be the exact opposite, right? And the
Right.
attempt could be to provide that very ideological group the sort of justification necessary to say, well, they claimed that there's also claims from the officials that this could have been false, right? As far as a false narrative regarding the ideology being represented. I just thought it was interesting, once again, keep your head on a swivel, right?
Right. Well, it's all politicized, so who knows what's going on. But I mean, I think this is a huge event. Charlie Kirk's passing and his assassination will be like, I think if you wanted to really define two different sides and make sure they're stopping talking, you
Mhm.
would shoot Charlie Kirk. That's the only reason why, because he wasn't a threat. He wasn't. They called him a racist and a fascist, which isn't right. Like
Yeah.
he's hanging out with Kansas Owens all the time, and he was actually crossing racial boundaries, like in a very kind of assertive way. Like so, it's not fair. The left kind of, I don't know if it's the same as the right, but this kind of weird labeling thing, like fascist and racist, is just like if you don't like somebody, you call them a name. But it's weird. But I think that if you wanted to stop people talking and like really solidify the sides, that just happened. So I think
Oh,
that that'll
yeah.
be like people will be like, well, I don't want to talk with you. You're going to try to kill me. I'm going to tell
Exactly.
you a thing. I'm not going to go out in the public forum and discuss anything. I don't like your ideas. And
Right.
a lot of these guys on the left are like subject of really weaponized psychology. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, I think it's like a weaponized mind control.
Yeah.
They're
I've
like detached from reality. It's not a real thing. Like these are really your enemies, or these guys with like just freedom of speech type stuff. Wow, man, you got a lot of bigger enemies. Your
right.
government screwing you over, turning your money into worthless confetti, giving your jobs out to HB1 people, selling you out left, right, and center, poisoning you.
Right.
You're not sovereign, watching you, and that's who you're worried about. You're insane, bro. You are
One
dumb.
nation under mind control at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I also saw just kind of like I you know I had noticed whenever I see individuals that I grew up with, or whatever the case may be, that fall very specifically onto certain sides of the political aisle, and just seeing the propaganda being parroted. One of them was um, basically gun violence doesn't care about your ideology, was one of the sort of propagandistic tools being leveraged and exploited in the moment from the more leftist side of the spectrum. And um, and it's either that or it's this heightened political violence attached to the transgender LGBTQ plus community, right? And so it typically fits one side of that political agenda for and typically it always seems to reinforce that mind virus on each side of the spectrum, I believe. And in reality, I mean, what was your thought when not only the individuals next to Charlie just before the shot happened, who are doing all these strange baseball signs, right? And then
Like this
uh,
weird arm thing. Yeah, yeah.
right, like the guy in the whites, like does something with his hat, and then
Those
and
are
then the other
actually
guy,
sniper signals as well. Those
yeah,
are also the same thing sniper signals use. Like the
that's what
shot's
it seemed
good.
like.
Like you can go
Exactly.
look at it's crazy.
And
I
it's
don't
right
know.
after, right?
When you see like I think you can put Kirk in the same thing as James O'Keefe
Mhm.
and that whole Veritas thing that he had.
Yeah.
He was infiltrated. Something very profound happened to him. He was clearly shaking the tree. He was actually doing real journalism,
Mhm.
and it was about big pharma. And like that's how you destroy from the inside. Like you get infiltrated, and other people come in, and you don't realize it. They went after him for his use of like black Ubers or something like that. It was a cost, but for the
Mhm.
amount of money he was generating and stuff, he's a CEO. Like,
Right.
I think that it was absurd. Like, you're supposed to drive around in a freaking, like, the guy is important. Like, he's the head of a huge organization that brings in millions of dollars a year. So that's what they, and it collapsed from the inside like an Intel op. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's the weird thing about this Charlie Kirk thing. This is speculation, but like, what's this guy Zen doing? Shoot me, and being an obvious distraction. It's an
That's what I'm
obvious
saying.
distraction. What's he doing there? That connotes that there's pre-planning and there's more than one. It's not a lone nut. Like, he's
Exactly.
obviously drawing away attention after the event. So
That was my
and the thing is, it just made come to mind the same thing happened during the JFK assassination, and it's in the JFK movie by Oliver Stone. An epileptic guy, like an hour before the shooting, gets out in the middle of the street and rolls around, and all the cops and all the paramedics come there and pick
Mhm.
him up and take him away, and then he disappears. He never goes into the hospital. So it's like a full-on intel thing. And I just
Exactly.
heard recently that Helms said somewhere, I got to find the reference, but he literally told people, yeah, the JFK operation was a perfect operation. Like, he was talking about it on terms. Operation's also a magical term, but it is interesting. Like, these are really incredible times of like intel takedowns and manipulations, and that, like, Charlie Kirk's gone, and then Ben Shapiro, he's basically an Israeli citizen,
Yeah.
takes over. Like, whoa, people should
Mhm.
really be careful. Like, people really need to be careful. Like, this is bad. Like,
It is.
this is real. I mean, it's a really horrible situation what just happened.
And the timing too of the shots. You saw that
Oh
angle,
no, you're
right?
gone
Of
again.
the
Great.
of
So
oh, damn it.
let's try this.
That sounds good. So William lost my audio again, guys, but don't worry
I think it's
because
got to be my computer.
it makes sense. But I for
I think it's got to
now,
be my computer.
until he gets this fixed, or we decide to call it quits, I'll show you guys a video real quick because I thought this was very strange. And again, it's the timing of it, and it feels like to me there's no way that this is coincidental, but it feels like strategic, precise in terms of the timing itself. Thanks, Gerald. I appreciate you, brother. Hold on, we got William back.
Can you
Hey,
hear me now?
William, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I guess I won't say that name anymore. My final thing I could hear you is, he's basically an Israeli citizen. Gone.
Right. Yeah, man. Maybe we're treading on thin ice at this moment. Who knows? But I wouldn't at all be surprised
It's
if
just
there are
really
some.
dangerous days. Like, imagine that
Mhm.
you get shot for having freedom of speech. Like, that's what he
Exactly.
was doing. Like, it's
Exactly.
really crazy. Let's play these Illuminati numbers. You'll get a kick out of these.
Okay,
If
definitely.
you could bring up that video.
All right, let me stop sharing
It
that.
just shows like people need to read this book. It's important.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree.
But there are 22 men in his troop. So, like, it's 22, and they're talking about inserting new values and perspectives into the minds of 11 men. So they know he knows what he's doing. He's changing thought reform, right? It's thought.
Wow.
But the 11th, there was a July 11th there too. Um, Shaw like gets up. He goes to bed at 11 o'clock. There's a 9/11 in this. 911 names were stricken from the list. We just had a 9/11 yesterday. Yeah, no, it's crazy. He knew all this stuff. This whole thing, when they're doing the hypnotic induction, is like 11 hours. The immersion would be for 11 hours. Then the first contact start. Total immersion time into the unconscious mind of the subject during the first contact had been 11 hours. So he's saying it's the number of magic. He's like literally saying it like he knew it.
That's so insane.
In the first part where Sinatra has his first dream sequence,
Right.
it happens at 3:11 at night. So it's like they know what they're doing.
God.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. And this scene is actually interesting because he's presented as a schizo. Like he's presented like our day. Behind me would be a like note board with pins and all kinds of diagrams.
Yeah, Charlie.
But if you go back to this scene, he's got a bunch of different books on a bunch of different subjects. So he's like trying to figure stuff out, like just like the rest of us.
Yeah. It looked like he was pouring through them and attempting to find out why he's having this recurring nightmare, right?
Yeah.
This nation jealously guards its highest award for valor, the Congressional Medal of Honor. In the Korean War, with 5,720,000 personnel engaged, only 77 men were so honored.
When I get married to my
So
old
only
lady,
77 men were so honored. 77
Yeah.
total occult Liber 77 names of Satan. It's a huge primary I talk about in my book Prophet of Evil. This is really interesting. So this is another kind of key phase, I'm sure you remember, where Shaw goes into a bar and he asks for a deck of cards, but in the background the bartender's talking. And listen to this numerology in this. It says the number 11, and then he says, "Go jump in a lake," and that's what he goes and does.
Oh my God!
He jumps in the lake in Central Park.
I didn't realize that what he gave the actual.
He gave the trigger. The trigger comes, then the phrase comes, and he rolls off.
Right.
So he's supposedly the trigger induces the suggestibility.
no idea that this guy comes in the same package, that it's a package deal, and for 11 long years, I got this crumb tied around my neck. And believe me,
For 11 long years, I've got this drunk tied around my neck.
it's no bargain. You've got no idea what kind of a problem I got with this guy.
Sorry I'm late, kid. Got held up in traffic, you know.
Again. So I says to him, please do me a favor, will you? Why don't you go and take yourself a cab and go up to Central Park and go jump in the lake?
And now he's off. He goes and jumps in the lake. And then Sinatra follows him, Marco, and that's how he kind of keys into the importance of the solitaire.
Right.
Raymond, I don't know why yours is the only apartment in New York City without an air conditioner. You know, sometimes I think you came to us for another century. Chu Chin Chow, or whatever your name is. The steaks are to be broiled for exactly 11 minutes, no more, no less, on each side in a preheated grill at 4. So
the witch asked for her meat to be cooked at 11 minutes on each side. That's not a mistake. These are not mistakes. So
right.
It's people need to see this movie. It's incredible.
Especially when Chun Chen or whatever his name is, who was the interpreter, right, for the unit, and I think he was Korean interpreter or something, right, for the unit when they were basically knocked out and then flown into over Manchuria and essentially given their at the very least, this is where they were programmed, right, to kill essentially. And I just thought it was interesting because you mentioned I also just among the interesting aspects of the story itself, the fact that he essentially takes over that media publication as an asset, which I found very interesting. And obviously it would make sense that they would hope to strategically kill two birds with one stone in a way, but also, have an asset in place where you could continue to influence the public for a time while it's just interesting to me. And again, it's like he ends up strategically taking out this prominent media and publication and simultaneously eliminating this dissenting voice, right, which I also thought was interesting. And then it's also sort of all for this overall global death cult, right? That's what you could say, because you know what I mean? I think that's the perfect description in a way. And with when he goes through his first recurring nightmare, I felt like Sinatra, it was very interesting because it was almost as if it was him waking up to his prior programming, and that reminded me of all these allegations of the Green Berets and former Special Forces members who allegedly went through this forced Manchurian Candidate program as a part of their training and were essentially embedded with, let's say, in McVeigh's context, with an implanted molar that was some sort of microchip style, induced psychological control. It's very strange how much they could accomplish with the dentistry visits that he was having. And the other aspect was, I thought, when Louis Jolyon West went to visit him, he most likely, in my mind, just theoretically speculating, it seemed like he would have easily implanted the instructions in the subconscious mind of McVeigh that he would be sort of rescued at the last moment and given the counteracting, substance that would keep him from actually being executed. But it makes sense, right? Didn't they say? I read somewhere, I think it was from Gunter Russbacher, or no, it was Paul Wiltshire, who his source was Gunter Russbacher, the alleged domestic operative who claimed to have been the pilot who flew George Bush Sr. to Paris for the infamous meeting for the October surprise hostage crisis negotiation. And he claimed he had all these extraordinary claims about Waco being a mind control, essentially a testing ground operation. And it's very strange when you kind of listen to what they claim happened, because they even suggest that Randy Weaver was waking up to his prior programming from, and that the person responsible for him sort of waking up was Vicky. And that was why she was a priority target whenever they went to Ruby Ridge, which, if you listen to what's his name, the individual hostage negotiator that went up there. I can't remember his name right now. Bo Gritz, that's his name. Bo Gritz. Yeah, he claimed he saw at Camp Vicky, right, the operational, which is ridiculous that they named it that in the first place, with the tanks and everything. It looked like a military, headquarters, essentially, field, or at least some sort of base of operations. But Bo Gritz claims to have seen the intelligence that claimed Vicky was the priority target, right? Because, of course, he only claimed because she was sort of the, head of the family and had the most influence. And so they preferred to take her out. And then they thought that Randy would somehow be more willing to negotiate, which is a weird strategy if you consider. I don't know, if you killed my wife, I think I'd be far less willing to negotiate. I don't know. Right? Anyway.
Yeah, strange days, man. It's all strange.
I know, man. There's so much we could continue to weave in and out of this storyline, and obviously, just recently, right, that you had mentioned privately that Charlotte train stabber mentioning mind control as well. It's just never.
He said he had materials in his body.
My God.
Literally said, I have materials. What's his name? It's DeCarlos Brown. But, he made, I think one of the stratagems these days is you claim schizophrenia, and then you can get away with it. So I think to some of these people, I can play that video. I've got it right here.
Let's see it.
Let's get rid of this.
Is it that one?
No, that's I got the DeCarlos Brown one right here.
Okay. Appreciate all of you in the chat for showing up today, by the way. I just wanted to mention that. There's definitely strange times these days, right, William? Is this one?
That's the slides. Go to the other. Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. There it is. There it is.
Something in your body did what?
Nah, the material, put it like this, the material using my body to stab the lady.
So the material in his body is stabbed the lady.
And so she just got stabbed.
Yeah. That's not me. I'm talking about just for no reason. But since they did that, now they got to investigate the material my body exposed to. Since they want to do all that, now they got to investigate.
It's funny because she's from the Ukraine. She's from Russia, and they got a war. They had a war going on against the United States. So I'm just trying to understand, out of all people, why her?
It ain't. I don't have nothing. They just lashed out on her. That's what happened. They lashed out.
Split brain. He's saying they let somebody in his body.
Who was working the material? Whoever was working the material, they lashed out on her.
Whoa.
Yeah, something else is working the material lashed out on her, the material in his bottle.
That felt like they instantly tried to evoke the racial tension, right? And make this a very much another aspect of the culture war, right? And you know, it's hard for me. I watched the full video, her bleeding out. It's so terrible, and the individual surrounding her. I mean, there was one guy who came up and attempted to apply pressure and help at one point, but I mean, it just goes to show, right? Like, we are in that sort of environment where it's the bystander effect at a certain level as well, I guess you could say. But man, we're in a moral crisis. I feel like,
things aren't good, man. Things are not good.
No, and I won't keep you. We agreed we'd probably get out of here soon. So I appreciate you, William, so much for coming on. And I know we didn't get as far into the presentation as I was hoping, but hey, there's a part 2 that we could potentially do where we could hopefully stay on task a little bit more. I'm sorry, I kept wandering back into the Charlie Kirk story because it's just so much, obviously relevant in this moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I couldn't really help myself. But as we kind of wind down, I did want to just mention, because I wanted to know if you saw this, we paid some Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, that's weird.
Truth is far stranger than fiction, my brother. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you right now, what gives me hope and it inspires me to continue on this path is conversations like this and interactions with people like you. So I just want to tell you, you already know how much you've inspired me and how much I admire you and your work for so long. So I have to reiterate, only because I do very much feel forever grateful for these opportunities. And so I can't thank you enough, brother. And everyone, go support William. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we get out of here?
Check out my podcast. I got a lot of stuff. This new MK Ultra case nobody seems to want to cover. Probably the most important mind control case I've seen. I've read a lot of documents. It's called, it's about the Montreal experiments, Ewan Cameron. It's called Tanny versus Victoria Hospital and McGill University. And it's a mind blower. It's really just a historical overview of everything they were doing from the 30s, guys. It's before even 1953. So check that out. I read it into the record, 3 things. And thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you. Until next time. I've got 30 hours on this. We've barely scratched the surface.
I know. Sounds good. Well, we'll definitely get a part 2 on the schedule here soon. And thank you again, William.
All right,
appreciate you as always. Have a good one, brother.
I appreciate you as well. Take care. Peace.
Later on. All right, guys. Honestly, I will go ahead and get out of here, but I did want to. There was that video I was hoping to show. I thought was very interesting, and and it definitely kind of, at the very least, to me, I feel like the timing has to be too precise, right? And maybe I'm out of line, and I shouldn't kind of prescribe more to the moment than is effectively it requires or is necessary. But I do feel like, just watching this, how convenient and precise the timing was.
In America over the last 10 years. Counting or not counting gang violence? Great. I'm going to give you this credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
That is no way. It's just too precise to me. And I also think that when you look at obviously, we had mentioned the individuals who are providing these strange baseball signals, these hand gestures and things of that nature. I mean, my God, you have to witness it for yourself, or it just feels like, and also you can kind of see when it happens. Now, the only thing that caught my attention was the timing of when the shooting takes place. Around these hand signals. But I will say, just as far as like some sort of devil's advocate, it seems like you did have one of the individuals, I think both of them seem to jump, who are doing the hand gestures. So they do seem to sort of react naturally in the moment if you weren't expecting the gun to fire, but not entirely certain of that. So hold on, let's check this out as well.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Counting or not counting gang violence? Great. Do you know how many mass
Okay, that was the first one that doesn't show the actual shooting along with it. Hold on, let me actually pull that, because I'm telling you, here it is. This is very interesting, and I'm telling you, the moment that the shot is fired is directly after the hand gestures. Which, how on earth is that the case? You know, but
do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
I just yeah, one more time. That's too insane.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Hand gestures.
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Hand gestures. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't seem like they didn't jump enough in my mind, but yeah, it feels like that it can't be. I mean, maybe it's commonplace where they're providing these strange hand signals to the surrounding security just to keep them in position or something to that effect. Yeah, I saw he jumps. I understand, and that's the reason why I mentioned the fact that he does jump. So you could definitely argue that it's hard to imagine that they were expecting the shot to be fired, or it's also, how could you not just naturally react and jump in the moment, even if you are expecting it? I don't know. It's possible either way. I do think there's a legitimate argument to be made there. I'm just considering if this were a very strategic professional operation for a targeted assassination, just for, you know, if, and again, I'm not under the impression that he was entirely turning his back on Israel. It seems like his donors were very upset with him, and he reacted accordingly, where he seemingly was being called anti-Semitic, and his donors were up in arms because of certain comments he was making. But then he comes out and kind of reiterates how he fully supports the state of Israel and things of that effect. So it's hard for me to completely just come down on the side of the ultimate conclusion has to be that again, this is mutually benefits the permanent establishment and the Israeli state as well. So I mean, what Netanyahu claimed two weeks prior, he talks to him and invites him to Israel, which I think he actually rejected that invitation, is what everyone is claiming. But if you actually watch what Netanyahu says during his ridiculous media sort of appearances following this, it's very difficult to not imagine they're attempting to have us. It's either very sloppy and you're coming out too quickly to deny something. I don't know. I'm very much under the impression that they would have us believe that this is more than likely, especially considering the current environment, deliberately tied to Israel, right? It feels like Israel. It's just so, if it's too easy, I have to be skeptical. It's just, I don't know. And maybe it just feels as if, because again, when Netanyahu comes out and he makes this media appearance, here I'll show you one of the most ridiculous aspects of it, and it seems as if, why would you feel the need to address it in such a way, right? And of course, should give all of us pause.
He said, he wrote me a letter on May 2nd this year. He said, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances to defend Judeo-Christian civilization. A few weeks before the tragedy yesterday, I called him and I spoke to him and I said, please come to Israel. I invited him to Israel. And sadly, that visit will not take place. But he was a defender of our common Judeo-Christian civilization. He was unbelievably excited to walk in the footsteps of Jesus here. He valued our bond, the bond between America and Israel. He He did so many things to defend free speech. He had his truth. He stood up for it. But he said, you can come and debate me. He invited that debate. He certainly didn't invite the violence, the horrible violence that tried to silence him. And, this is a worldwide problem. The people on the extremes, the Islamists, the radical Islamists, and their union with the ultra progressives, they often speak about human rights. They speak about free speech, but they use violence to try to.
So he instantly attempts to tie it to radical Islamists and the alleged a sort of alliance between the radical Islamists and the leftist progressive radicals, which to me is just laughable, honestly, because if you're a radical Islamist, how on earth would you imagine this sort of ideological alliance with the very sort of protected class that is essentially undermining and as far as the religious ideology attached to most Islamist practices, it seems as if homosexuality is very much frowned upon, right? So I don't think that you're going to have this major alliance between the two ideologies, and it's another thing that you can clearly just dismiss at face value. But it's again, it's Netanyahu coming out and feeling the need to obviously acknowledge this and then tie some sort of ridiculous motive and inspiration to the alleged event, which is just so clearly an attempt in misdirection. But I don't know. It's when you consider all of that with obviously the connections that reminded me very much of the Vegas shooting, right, where you have these tail transponder numbers that go that essentially disappear and go off radar just at this strategic moment. And it looks like the airfield itself was only 12 minutes from the actual university campus. So it makes sense. I think the interstate, I think it was I-15 or something to that effect, that definitely seemed to be a stone's throw from the shooting site, which you would have to imagine was strategically arranged in terms of the operational standpoint on the ground. And then the very disturbing details surrounding this alleged private plane, right? Which again, if you look into this, it seems as if there was a legitimate example of, and if you haven't quite remembered the reference that I mentioned there, the Vegas shooting, obviously being whenever the helicopters, their tail transponders essentially dropped off the radar, and also they were being utilized as essentially they were false transponder numbers anyway that tied back to various planes that weren't even up in the air at the time, right? Which it's very interesting to witness all of this, right, firsthand. And so I'm thinking that you would clearly have to imagine, and especially as William mentioned, the ridiculous false misidentified perpetrators that very seemingly can fit the pattern of the patsy, right? They seemingly are providing these distractionary measures for the individual perpetrator himself and the operators who are cleaning up the kind of just operational outcome in the moment. It would give them the necessary time, right, the window necessary for them to sort of make their escape, right, and so it seems to fit perfectly with how you would kind of launch and effectively, implement an operation such as this. And so again, I just think that once you look into more of the finer details of this, and who knows about these ridiculous stories about the book being written, right? The Amazon book, the shooting of Charlie Kirk, posted like one day before his murder, and then the New York Times and the LA Times allegedly reporting that he had been shot on September 9th, the day before his assassination. It all seems like that is a little bit too, maybe it's it could be some sort of strategic way to undermine the credibility of individual dissenting opinions, right? That should be taken seriously. And so that it does feel like the smoking gun is this suspicious flight activity, right, seen before the assassination. And so they also attempted to wipe out the flight data. And if you look at all the 4chan sort of connections, which be very careful when doing so, because basically there's many different, I think, deliberate deceptive narratives that are very much being disseminated by design. But this, of course, feels like a smoking gun, because this private jet has a tail number registered with the FAA, N888KG, and it's an aircraft that's owned by an LLC registered in Utah, Lehigh, Utah. I'm not sure, with owner Derek Maxfield listed in some of the databases. And this jet departed from Provo Municipal Airport about 10 to 12 minutes from the university campus, obviously. And then roughly 1 hour after the shooting, you have flight tracking data, right, that seems to point that this jet takes off heading southeast toward the Arizona-Nevada border, consistent with a standard domestic flight at cruise speeds, right, that it lists. And then at approximately 30 to 46 minutes into the flight, you have aircraft's transponder being disabled, causing it to go dark or vanish from public radar. And so then you have a mandated FAA system, essentially it broadcasts this real-time position, altitude, identity data, and for collision avoidance and tracking. And so this is how all of this was collected as far as the flight tracking data. And so during the blackout, this jet could have legitimately covered allegedly 350 to 400 nautical miles, enough distance for a quick drop off at a remote airstrip like Page Municipal Airport in Arizona, about 300 nautical miles away, around 33 minutes flight time. Which, how many times can we see this, right? What was it? 33 hours into the manhunt, we discovered the perpetrator, allegedly, who's this kid that clearly seems to have been placed perfectly onto the path of the patsy, and potentially has there's no way that, especially considering all of the misidentified perpetrators, and even of course the 4chan schizos, it's so funny to have seen the ridiculous alleged ties to the trans perpetrators, which apparently didn't seem to be the case. But yeah, if you look at this, there's no way that you could kind of dismiss it and without prying deeper below the surface, at least to a certain extent, and attempt to kind of at the very least approach this in some objective way that's not entirely ideologically driven. Because again, that's the goal here. They don't want you to critically think through this. They want you to fall into these preordained outcomes, these traps that are very, I think it's deliberate deception at every level, as we always say. And then I saw John Colin, the individual who's done some work on the Vegas shooting. He posted something a few hours ago about these UAS or UAV experts claim that there's a drone, right, that's being flown over the Utah Valley University campus just minutes after Charlie Kirk's assassinated. I find that interesting because you never know how you're going to, you're trying to arrange things, but also keep the operation just very much smoothly. Obviously, if you're trying to maintain the ground level operation, you're going to have eyes in the sky. And I think that's just very important for people to be aware of, beyond the fact that, did you see as well, Kash Patel? He comes out and he decides to give a statement and ends with, "To my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla," which is very strange language to utilize and to, evoke this ancient sort of again, it's this. In my mind, it's very much neo-pagan, but maybe I am wrong. It's just, again, you're falling in line with this very strange ideological framework here. But the obvious patsy who was trotted around with his pants down, and and also seemed to say shoot me a couple of different times, which to me, as William mentioned, seemed very much distractionary, draw eyes away from right, the individual operatives who obviously are attempting to facilitate the consequential cover up here, and get the individual assets out of the right. Let's see. Cash Patel also said they caught the shooter in 33 hours. I know, right? I mentioned that earlier as well. It's so crazy, but yeah, this George Zinn, this apparent patsy, yeah, just like the Delphi murders, comment Mama. I know. That's why it caught my attention. What is happening with these strange neo-pagan ideological? It's like they're these very much kind of. It's a recycled ideology, but it has a modern kind of manifestation that again, I think it in a way it sort of lionizes the what seems to be, oh no, $7.77. Damn. My brother, God is love. I appreciate you, man, as always. But yeah, I think that, so he says, two of the best researchers out there doing it. Much love, brother. Come to Austin and see Sam at the mothership in October. Hey, that would be a lot of fun, honestly. I would love that. But yeah, Valhalla. What are we talking about here, right? It feels like this, this Nordic pantheon of gods that is consistently kind of referenced, and seems like it very much sort of it seems to immortalize this sort of violence, right? And that's yeah, in Odinism especially, right? The Vinlander group, right? Which you look up the Vinlander, it's very interesting. It seems like it's a very long-standing and old. I think, I can't remember when it was published, but it seems to be some sort of pivotal literature in the context of these neo-pagan belief systems. And anyway, it's a very interesting path, and again, the language itself. But for George Zinn, this alleged patsy, he apparently he creates this diversion amid the Charlie Kirk assassination, but he also happens to recount how he knew Al Qaeda was responsible for the 9/11 attack the moment he saw the towers fall. So I don't know if anything gives you pause or causes you to at the very least remain skeptical, then that might be another extraordinary, ridiculous layer to the story. But yeah, you continue to see the sort of unfortunate fallout, right, in regard to a lot of this, and not only like I said before with the Jesse Waters example. I mean, they're calling for war, right, and it's in a way where I think, again, this is political violence at an all-time high, but it's the desired result. It's the deliberate divisiveness that is involved here. And what does Jesse Waters say? We're going to avenge Charlie Kirk's death. Everybody's accountable, and we're watching. The politicians, the media, and all these rats out there. This can never happen again. It ends now. And that is very divisive language. And of course, you would want to heighten the political state as far as the tension themselves in terms of the culture war, and this will only further inflate that very just kind of core issue plaguing modern society in many ways. And so I just when you're aware of that sort of language being attached to all of this, and then the strange, like who is the individual, that anti-ICE protester who used a bullhorn and chants, "We got Charlie in the neck," and says DHS is next, and it's just so unfortunate. I wonder how many because clearly you have influencers during COVID, if you remember the examples and just how many examples there were, and then the sort of acknowledgement subsequently. There was subsequent acknowledgement of the fact that you had the permanent establishment paying independent influencers, paying them to obviously promote COVID propaganda and the COVID vaccine, right? So why on earth wouldn't they still have that method in place where they're funding influencers to very much just, again, escalate in every aspect of the I think this very kind of, it's the current environment where it's obviously falling into this ratcheted up level of tension that is very much seemingly unprecedented in recent memory. And so I feel like this is the strategy of tension at play, and unfortunately there is I feel as if it's kind of systematically entrenched at a level to where the real strategic outcome is being achieved far more than we would want to admit, and that's, I find that very upsetting, right? And so I think that another ridiculous example before we get out of here and I finally wind this thing down is obviously you have your boy Elder TikTok, right? Which I found that video insane, right? Where this guy at the event in Utah, it's kind of a glimpse again into the mass trauma ritual, definitely. But it's also, this specifically is a window into kind of the psychological state of the average American at this moment, at least the younger generations, and this very much TikTok influencer generation in many ways. And one of the individuals who apparently runs over to the station where they had Charlie Kirk's merch that's covered in blood. He then grabs a lot of the merch and then tries to sell it and distribute it online after the fact. And he had like this absolutely ridiculous video that he made during this event. And I feel like it's something that honestly we should all just at least remind ourselves to step away from our digital devices for a time. And definitely, I think you begin to feel separated from reality itself when you live your life through a device. And man, Comment Mama, thank you so much. I appreciate you more than you know. And that goes for all of you, honestly. And yeah, Gerald. All right, I'll say it. Normies are retarded. I'll say, but I got nothing but love for all of you, and I can't thank you enough for showing up. But yeah, let's play this briefly, and then we'll probably wind down, get out of here. But this is so crazy, right?
It's your boy on TikTok. There was just a gunshot at Charlie Kirk. We're in Utah. There's a gunfire. This is not a joke. Hey, let's go. Hey, let's go. Hey, let's go. It's your boy Elder TikTok. There was just a gunfire in Utah. This is not a drill. There is a gunfire in Utah. Shots fired here in Utah. This is not a joke. Charlie Kirk, Elder TikTok, Mormon Central, Utah. There was a gun that just fired off.
So crazy.
I am not playing with y'all. Hey, make sure you go to church on Sunday. Read the Book of Mormon. This is not a drill.
Read the Book of Mormon. This is not a drill, bro. Come on now.
Hey, Jesus is Lord. Jesus will protect you. Jesus is your savior, bro. I'm not even lying. Make sure you subscribe to Elder TikTok on Instagram. It's your boy Elder TikTok.
I am sorry. I had to show it because, I mean, obviously, this is a window into the very much the mind virus plaguing society at large. And so I think understanding that it feels like the rifle was planted. I don't know. Maybe you could make the argument that you see the videos of the individual perpetrator. Allegedly, it looks like he has a limp, right? But many people have suggested that he had the long gun fully attached in his pants. man, it's possible, but yeah, I don't know. It feels far more likely that if this was a sophisticated professional operation, they would just have the individual assets in place to clean up the scene directly after right the event takes place and the operation is given the green light. And so in my mind, I would almost think you would just leave the rifle in position, right? And you would have individuals in place to sort of clean up the crime scene, and facilitate that cover up. And again, we have that perfect window just after the crime is taking place, where the individual perpetrator, if this is a sophisticated operative, had more than enough time to be whisked out of town and whisked away into safety and some sort of protected op. And so it's difficult knowing how many different misidentified perpetrators there have been. That seemed as if, once again, like William mentioned earlier in Daily Plaza, where you had these individual distractionary assets in position geographically around the operational area to where they would be able to draw attention in specific areas, specific what do they call them? Choke points, basically, in a way, on the ground in context of the operation itself. So that's I don't know. It's hard for me. My mind directly goes there. It's difficult for it not to at this point. I'm definitely open to the idea that I don't know, that some of this isn't necessarily as far as some of the interesting more speculative conclusions that I've come to aren't effectively. I'm not in any real way certain, right, or officially decided on anything other than it feels like a psyop, and that doesn't mean that. I mean, obviously, I'm still overwhelmingly opposed to political violence, honestly, and in this fashion, I see no positive outcome, and so I will leave it at that. Probably, there's so much more I would love to talk with you guys about, but I'm gonna have to start doing streams occasionally as well, just to touch on things that I don't necessarily get the chance to otherwise, and maybe hopefully you guys will appreciate that as well. But anyway, so nothing but love for all of you, honestly, especially in this moment. It's we just need to appreciate what we have, and I appreciate who I've surrounded myself with very much. Beautiful people, good intentions, and that's all we could hope for. So nothing but love, and I'll catch you guys soon. Have a wonderful Friday. Honestly, have a great weekend, and I'll look forward to honestly doing another stream here in the near future. And just a heads up, guys, I think tomorrow morning I'll be hanging out with the Occult Rejects for a while, talking a little bit more about sort of modern Manchurians and this interesting seamless connection to the mindset and the psychology of a modern mass shooter. And anyway, I definitely appreciate you all. So have a wonderful weekend, and man, have some good times with your family, with your friends. Just remind yourself what matters most. So nothing but love, guys. Have a great day.